Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Virtual Legality. I'm your host, Richard Hoeg, managing member of the Hoeg Law business law firm, and we're here for hangouts and headlines to primarily hang out and read at least one headline here. We actually have two set up in the description to this video, but one is really just because it was the headline that was directed to me, and we'll take a look at the website in just a minute when we go over the headlines, but it's just apocalyptic. It's not where anybody would want to read things. There's so many ads and pop-ups and other things coming into your vision. The other is Deadline, which you may or may not be familiar with as kind of a little bit of a more tabloidy Hollywood coverage type website. But we really have a light one today in terms of those headlines. I think in the future, I'm going to be trying to make the Friday episode in particular, not that there can't be lightness and frivolity in the rest of the week. I'm going to try to make the Friday episode a little bit lighter than usual. So we do have an interesting case about a very popular TV program, especially in the US, called The Office, obviously based on a UK series. I know folks from the UK, it's yours. We took it, we changed it. I get that, but it's very popular, at least in its US form here in America. And so NBCUniversal has found itself embroiled in a lawsuit, which I think is pretty interesting. And we'll talk about it just a little. It's not going to be one of those advanced media critical reading sessions because, frankly, I think I just want Fridays to be a little bit more hangouty, a little bit more chill with how we interact with each other. So first and foremost, of course, how is everybody doing? I did see some rather shocking news when I woke up this morning about Japan's former prime minister being assassinated, which is just wild. And I feel for the people of Japan and dealing with all of that. I saw that mentioned in the comments as well to this. So, know that we're thinking about you on that kind of thing. It's absolutely crazy of a story. I have to look into that further. I can't speak on it more fulsomely right now. But obviously, just a crazy story. So I do feel for you for that. We've got good mornings coming in. We've got Alabama's Gulf Coast. Ida's seen both versions of The Office. I have to admit, I think so have I. I think I've seen Ricky Gervais and Bilbo Baggins in The Office in the UK version, but I have to also admit that I'm more familiar with the US version. Apple Pie says Hoeg Law Casual Fridays. It's actually a great name for them, isn't it? Yeah. So I think it's just a good way to head into the weekend. I suspect this was a week when I was coming back from vacation and otherwise dealing with a lot of important stuff in the legal side of things, that we will get more serious stuff throughout the week than we did perhaps this week. And I think it'll be a nice palate cleanser, nice setup for the weekend, nice setup for whatever will come the week to follow, to have a day that we can say, hey, you know what? Maybe we just read, Thor, Love and Thunder reviews and talk about how we write movie reviews or whatever. We're not doing that today, folks, by the way, but in terms of an example for what we might do here in this space. If you find something that you think is cool or interesting and fits that kind of casual Friday mold, we're not going to be as bound to trying to have it hit time constraints and be close and topical in the news for those kinds of things. So let me know. As I always say, DM me. I can't be everywhere. I can't see everything. And I like to talk about these things with you, hang out, have fun. But I'm sure there are great articles that I'm missing all the time because I only have so many eyeballs and sets of eyeballs. Mrs. Hoeg Law, of course, is on the case as well. But we are only two people, as it turns out. Morning from Dallas, Texas. Morning from Yorkshire. I think I said that right, maybe. Of the UK. I know I'm supposed to say Yorkshire here in America, but we'll see. Hand wave from the UK, hand wave emoji. Love it. Movie reviews don't tease us like that. I was just thinking that it could be fun. Just going over a popular game that came out, a popular TV show or movie, and looking at reviews of those various things. I'm still trying to get some postmortems back and set up for those of you that haven't been in virtual legality with us for that long. I do like to do kind of reviews, criticism of shows that I've watched, movies that I've watched, games that I've played. A little less frequently on that last one just because games are so long. But to get those out there, have those conversations, we've done them in the past in this channel. And I want to get back to that a little bit and have fun with those as well. Just generally have a little bit more fun here. It's been a very serious month, 2 months in my interactions with the internet, basically in this channel or otherwise. And I really want to see, some of that fun and lightness come back. Virtual Legality was effectively about talking about important stuff, business and law, obviously, but through the lens of fun stuff that we otherwise like to read about, and not so much seriousness. Cormoran Hoeg, Love and Thunder. Yes, that's what I go by. That was my old law firm nickname, of course. You get the smiles, but you don't want to be on the other side of the negotiation. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. As a Japanese viewer, I'm grateful for the lighthearted stream this morning. Yeah, I know I mentioned it at the top of the video here, but I apologize for that kind of contrast. But I'm glad to hear that it works for you. I wasn't expecting to see that news. I was checking it. That's why I was maybe a minute late to start this episode, as I saw it referenced in the comments. I said, wait, what happened? And so I was reading some of the news up there. Apple Pie, Hoeg, let's be honest, it's been serious since 2012. It's a serious time in the world, obviously, and we've got all sorts of concerns on a regular basis. I don't know that we need to focus on those in this space, right? And obviously, I cover things like very important Supreme Court decisions here, and so I like to talk about those things, talk them through with you. But Hangouts is first, and I'm starting to remember that when I say the name of the show, because I want it to be about, chatting with you, talking with you all, much to the chagrin of the people that click on these and say, wait, where is the headline? I'm trying to put chapters in every episode. I'm trying to add to the archive of just the headlines. We're working through it all together. We're having fun this summer, experimenting with start times for the episodes, exactly how that archival process should look. We do have some new kind of assets and things that are going to go into an intro for just the headlines to separate them out in people's heads a little bit more, because I know people were getting potentially confused by that, and that's entirely my fault. But yeah, let's be a little bit more casual, even when we're talking about things like trademark lawsuits, because the law and the various ways that especially giant corporations interact can be funny, right? And it can be interesting, but it can also inform, how we see the world and what we understand it is to have happening. Let's see. Newt says, should be caught up and not listening to Hoeg at 2 times speed very shortly. Yes. As long as my enunciation survives that process, watch me at whatever speed you like when you're behind or otherwise watching the archives. I personally watch myself at 1.75 when I'm doing editing passes and things like that. So I definitely get it. See, what else do we have here? And there we go. Hoeg at regular speed. That was a short story told in 2 chapters, but I loved it. It was riveting. Well told. Somebody says it's fantastic. I don't know what Pew Pew's responding to here, but many people dislike racing here because NASCAR is viewed as a highly political and Southern sport. Probably an F1 reference would be my guess. Don't know. Yeah, it also goes in a circle. So I know a lot of people like it. I'm not disparaging that. It was never part of my growing up or anything like that. I tend to like road races more because they seem more interesting to me. And yes, verified F1. All right. Pretty good times. And yeah, I think that's about it. As I said, anybody that wants to put forth headlines, absolutely fantastic. Anyone that wants to otherwise bring up topics of conversation that you just want to chat about. Obviously, we're not limiting ourselves to super chats or anything like that here. I like to talk to everybody that I can, although I do see a super chat here and I want to make sure I get to it. Cheeseball456, great to see you back. Afternoon from Scotland. Hello, Scotland. Finished Final Fantasy VII. Good call. Totally get the hype behind a remake and remaster. Oh, fantastic. Yeah, Final Fantasy VII is one of the best. And then definitely play Final Fantasy VII Remake because it may not be exactly what it seems to be on its face. And I'll leave it at that. And then when you finish Final Fantasy VII Remake, I think I have an hour and a half post-mortem here on this channel where I both talk about what I like about that game and what I dislike. So you got the whole package ready to go in case you want to join the Final Fantasy VII Remake conversation before Final Fantasy VII quote-unquote Rebirth comes out. What is supposedly late next year. I don't think Square Enix is going to hit that timeline. As you can tell, though, folks, I'm always happy to talk video games. I love, in fact, one of my favorite questions here in this space as of the last couple of months are folks that maybe don't play that much or otherwise asking for tips on what they should play, what they enjoyed in the past. I love having those conversations. Heck, that might be a show at some point because I love having that conversation with people that don't necessarily game a ton and helping find things that people love, because gaming is so big at this point that you don't have to at all enjoy, military shooters to find something that you like in interactive entertainment, if we're being haughty about what it is. So absolutely, those questions are fantastic. Thank you so much for the super chat. As I say, all of that support counts. All that support matters. Helps me keep the lights on. Helps me do the episodes like this, do shows like this on a regular basis. So thank you so much. It is very, very much appreciated. Hello from Dubai. Pew Pew's mentioned that F1 is finally catching on in the US. That might be. I've started to get a lot of questions about it. So much so it's like, wow, do I need to be watching it more often? And so, yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. B19 says, I love the Hangout portion of Hangouts and Headlines. Yeah, it's interesting. This channel, I'll just speak on this philosophically a little bit. This channel has become something a little bit different than what it started out as. Over the last few days, you've been able to see me put out what are my Virtual Legality Prime episodes. We did a video on the Final Fantasy XIV billboards that were purchased and how that interacts with their materials usage license agreement, which, as I say it and describe it in that summary description, even I'm bored by. But I think the video does a great job, hopefully, toot my own horn here, of explaining how these various documents work together, how confusing they are, and what, if any, issue there might be from the legal perspective of these billboards going up and using assets from somebody else's material, how the intellectual property rights work. And then yesterday, I did a video on the Sony PlayStation side, and what really hits more than just gaming, which is this notion of digital ownership, right? I would be willing to bet that most people that watch this episode or watch any episode online or otherwise have purchased something in a digital capacity, whether that's a song from iTunes, a movie from Vudu, a video game from Xbox, Nintendo, PlayStation, Steam, wherever. And one of the things that happened yesterday, and I did a video on this you can check out, is that PlayStation, which closed their movie store as of August of last year, seems to have had written in one of their third-party licensor contracts that a year after that happens, not only can people not go into the store to buy new things, but for at least one studio, Studio Canal, they don't have access on their servers to the movie anymore as of this first anniversary date. Meaning, this is the big fright that has always accompanied digital ownership. Meaning that when they actually shut that down, despite the fact that you bought a Studio Canal movie, you'll no longer have access to it. Because if you actually read the terms of service in all of these platforms, you're not buying any permanent right to access the movie. You're buying a license that in almost all cases is limited by the ability of the platform provider to actually provide the content from the third-party licensor. And I think that's a big deal. And it hit the pages of Variety, of all things, just the PlayStation Store having this happen. And only right now, as we know, in Austria and Germany, it might be the other jurisdictions as well, but we haven't seen those notices yet. And it really calls into question the whole process of digital ownership and otherwise interacting in the digital space in a way that, as I said in that video, I can't imagine the other purveyors of digital goods and services were terribly happy about. If you are otherwise making a ton of money selling songs by Apple or movies through Vudu or whatever, you don't want headlines being, these people lost all their rights to that particular movie access. That makes you look bad, even though it's a different party signing different contracts. So a lot of fun there. I love doing these various things as well. But the point of that sojourn into describing what I did in the last two Virtual Legality episodes is like, that's what we did. That's what we did for coming up on 4 years now. It'll be the 4th anniversary in November. And then we also occasionally did guest spots, especially with Alita and Legal Bites and otherwise out online. Then we did Depp v. Heard, which became a big thing and started Hangouts and Headlines. So now we have this kind of bifurcated two-show approach to this channel. And then within the Hangouts and Headlines, of course, are Hangouts and Headlines. So not only are we bifurcated across those two specific shows, but within this show, we still have people that come in the comments and say, oh, I love the Hangouts. Fantastic. Oh, I love the Headlines. Why can't you get to it faster? And the answer is different episodes are going to be different. I'm going to try to remember to put chapters in all the descriptions of the videos that label, hey, this is Hangouts. We'll always start with a Hangout because, frankly, it's early in the morning for me. I like to get started by just chatting with you all, looking at questions, answering folks, and having fun. Then we'll do a headline, and then we'll probably do a follow-up Hangout, and then we'll be out. And lately, these have been about an hour long. I think that's a good time. If they can be 2 hours, that's a great time too. We've got all that time allotted depending on what are the needs of the day. But it's been a very interesting kind of philosophical balancing act between, when do you make a virtual legality episode? When do you do these particular Hangouts and Headlines episodes? Exactly what headlines do you focus on? Especially now that we're moving out of Depp v. Heard headlines, although I still get sent a lot of them. And I'll probably start doing one a week if they continue. Those would have been like the Tuesday time slot for this week. And then moving into other topics, having a lot of fun with those, but figuring out what it is that people respond to, react to. It's all a lot of fun. I love this stuff. I love having these conversations with you, but it is an interesting evolution of the channel. And I'm all for it. But I love seeing, chats like this. I love the Hangouts portion. Fantastic. I think that's awesome. And I will continue to try to deliver on these things. God, W, good morning, Hoeg. Finally caught you live. Good morning to you. Absolutely. My wife, co-counsel, says, you will love the clipped out versions he's working on for just headlines. I think someone responded by saying, I don't like the Hangouts at all. That's totally fair. Like I said, different minds, reasonable in all cases, can differ on this stuff. And I totally get that. Yvonne Burns, what in the name of the wee man is a Dunder Mifflin? Is that a hobbit that didn't make the cast? Funny you should mention hobbits in relation to The Office, although I think Dunder Mifflin is specifically the name of the United States office. But yeah, Dunder Mifflin is the fictional paper company at the heart of the NBC adaptation of The Office as a TV show. So we're going to get to it. This is really about trademark squatting and interactions that people have to go and register things that maybe don't belong to them and otherwise get into trouble with giant multinational corporations that have a use for the trademarks that they've otherwise registered. We're going to talk a little bit about that, the Trademark Act, all that fun stuff in just a minute. Pew Pew says, morning, Hoeg. Etymology of wanting versus insufficient. I hear wanting a lot on LawTube and wonder if that just has specific legal meaning. No, I think lawyers very often like turns of phrase, and leave you wanting or what have you is a very kind of archaic description of being insufficient, frankly. And so I know I'm guilty of this. My wife will regularly tell me that whatever phrase I just said, whatever word I just used, has archaic next to it in the dictionary. That used to be a running joke, especially early on in our relationship, that whatever I said was something that was old, idiomatic, and not used by normal people. And so I think lawyers as a group, I don't want to speak for everybody, of course, tend to like words, tend to like wordplay. I do a lot of puns here in Virtual Legality. I love that. I did learn very quickly that YouTube, the robots, the algorithm hates puns, hates them, because the computers are like, what? That's not a thing. Nobody's looking for that. And so what I tend to do now is put puns either in the slug line for, in Virtual Legality for the descriptions to those videos, or in the thumbnail. And then the titles, if you look at that, are a lot more kind of rote. Here are what the search terms would be. Here is like an index version of what this video is, rather than kind of the fun titles. And I learned this early on, right? You learn so much stuff doing this on a regular basis. I like to write my titles, if I had my druthers and robots didn't matter, as punny as possible. And you can go in early on in Virtual Legality, you can see me just making ridiculous kind of Leslie Knope from Parks and Recreation style headlines. But that changed as we moved on. So I think people using wanting are just people that find it cool. And yeah, cool is a relative term, especially for lawyers and people that, word wrangle. But I like wanting more than insufficient. You've probably heard me use it. It's the same reason why, when Rob of Law and Lumber and the discussion was happening in Depp v. Heard about whether you can find purchase in some capacity, meaning to find a foothold on something, was a standard usage of the word by Amber Heard. I'm leaning back and saying I use finding purchase like all the time in terms of a successful argument or otherwise. And it was still used oddly there. A lot of odd turns of phrase, of course, in that testimony. But yeah, I use purchase that way. I use wanting that way. So I think it's a lawyer thing more than a LawTube thing. Matova, to be fair, saying digital ownership when it comes to movies, music, and games is already, in my opinion, wrong. You do not have ownership at all, as laid out in nearly all stores' terms of service. Well, so the game that they play here, right, is that you own a license being a separate property right than the content itself. And that would be fine if, you were negotiating that license and it said it was perpetual and irrevocable. And that's what you'd negotiate if you were, actually looking to figure out what you're going to purchase in a corporate setting or something along those lines. Instead, what the licenses say is you have a license and it's yours until it isn't. And all of these companies are rowing in the same direction. They all want you to believe that you've purchased something because that's how they make their money. So all of them are trying to avoid the situation like this, which is good. They have the right incentives, but still these kinds of things can happen. And it puts the fear of God, I think, in everybody that has any kind of investment in digital ownership. And as I said in that video, PlayStation, who has lost the rights, it looks like, at the end of next month to have people actually get these films, and they might correct it. We don't know. It's getting enough press that they might try, are in the business of selling digital goods. And they even have a version of their most popular console, the current console, the PlayStation 5, that is digital only, that doesn't have a disk drive at all. And if you have one of those and you see this particular situation and they're selling you third-party content, I think you worry. Like, what did you actually negotiate in your contracts, PlayStation? What are you doing? Good morning, all. Did I miss Dunder Mifflin? Nope, we're just hanging out still. Absolutely, didn't miss anything. We're going to talk about Dunder Mifflin, and Steve Carell, John Krasinski, trademark lawsuits, all in a little bit. Stephanie says she bought a ticket for Hollywood Vampires next year, that being Johnny Depp's band, as we saw referenced a number of times in the trial. What else we got here? We have Britt. I haven't heard from Britt in a little while. With a super chat, the button says buy or purchase. They should be forced to put license or lease. I know they're saying buy the lease. Yep, that's exactly right. But that is not what people think. So it is shaving the law. I haven't heard that phrase before, in my opinion. I tend to agree, right? And I'm a contract attorney. I'm a business lawyer. I work with companies on putting together language. I'm generally pretty okay with folks making clear what's in their contract and being allowed to contract for what they want. But I agree that the buy button, I think, is misconstrued by basically everyone on earth. There aren't a lot of people that are dropping in on virtual legality and saying, hey, you know what? That Hoeg, you say buy, but he means buy the license. And you look at these terms of service, I have a greater understanding of what that means. No, you put the word buy, you put the word purchase in your press release, and people think that they have an ownership stake, that it can't just be pulled away from them at any time. And I don't blame them at all, right? I think this is an area where you could find yourself in an actual regulatory setting or otherwise being held accountable in some way for what looks to be verging on, I would never make an accusation like that in this space, but fraud, right? The concept being that if you have to use buy and purchase and whatever, and then you put in the PlayStation case, purchase does not mean purchase, own does not mean own, ownership does not mean ownership, in section 11, pages and pages and pages into a terms of service document that people are not realistically going to read, that's not the kind of thing that should hold. And so I tend to agree with you, Britt. It's one of those rare areas where I think mostly they've gone too far with this. And you really should know that whenever you have to say, whatever you think you just read doesn't mean that. If that goes into your terms of service, the whole model should probably be rethought. But I really appreciate that comment, definitely. Secret McSquirrel says, I love the Hangouts. I thank you so much, Secret McSquirrel. Cormoran, Dunder Mifflin, the paper person's paper people. Yep, got some plot lines from the show. UK office was Wernham Hogg. So close to Hoeg. Didn't actually remember what the name of the company was over there. Tiny Trifle says I have to make finger guns when I say pew pew. It's the rule. It's funny when I think of pew pew, I have to be honest, I think of the stories of people that are otherwise in science fiction movies that can't help but make the sound when they're supposed to shoot their CGI guns. And the difficulty that these directors or otherwise have in getting them to not move their lips when they're going pew 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 off to the side or doing whatever they're supposed to be doing. So I that's how I think of it. But again, as I said it just now, I did do the finger gun off there. So I think you got a point. I think that's an acceptable point. JC Gamer 18, what are your thoughts on the EEOC appeal with the Activision settlement? Almost no chance of success. Well, I guess I have to back that up. I assumed you meant the California appeal. The EEOC and the Activision have settled. I don't know that there's been any movement there. California is appealing it, but they don't have any standing, which that judge rightly found. And I've said that in a number of videos. But if there's an addition to that story, I'll look it up. I don't know what it might be. Pew Pew says yes, finger guns. All right, they might be off to the side. I don't know how much you'll see them, but I'll try to remember to do that. You have been found wanting. Watch A Knight's Tale. You know what's funny? When I was answering that question, Kelly, I was thinking, okay, there's a scene where people are looking over somebody, and I think the whole one is you have been weighed and you have been measured and you have been found wanting, and it's used as something that the antagonist says. And it's flipped around in that movie. That's a great Heath Ledger movie. That's one of my favorites. Really, really weird when it came out, especially because it was combining modern music with what is an adaptation, very loose, of the Canterbury Tales, A Knight's Tale. But it is a good movie. I really like that. I say change your stars from time to time. I think you probably heard it in this space. But great reference. Mrs. Hoeg Law says, oh my goodness, it's still a joke and maybe not a joke. We still have to look up words you use. I'm sorry. Guilty as charged. I do try. But yeah, sometimes that happens. JC Gamer 18, are you a Xenoblade fan? Yes, Xenoblade 3 coming out at the end of this month. And if you read my friend's preview at IGN, Travis, Tie Guy Travis, he's pretty positive about the game. So I'm very excited about that. As it turns out, with Forspoken moving out of the year and everything else moving out of the fall of this year, practically speaking, except for Ragnarok, which is now announced. This is going to be the big month for JRPGs here in America because we're getting Live Alive and we're getting Xenoblade 3. So looking forward to that. Great morning, Reasonable Minds, says Spark. There's an art to YouTubing, says Apple Pie, like there's an art to Googling. There is a lot to learn about this, and every day I'm learning more. And every day, I am working with people that I trust in this space, and everybody asks questions of one another. And as I said in a text to one of them earlier this week, I asked for a tip on something, and they returned with this kind of Byzantine thing that they had to do to do it. And I said, man, everybody here, no matter how professional you think it might otherwise look, is putting these episodes together with what I described as duct tape and bubblegum. And people would not believe like the various things that we do to try to make the chats work or to make the intro videos work or things like that. And it's remarkable. So, the next time you're on your favorite stream, you're talking with your favorite content creator, just keep in mind, they're doing all sorts of weird stuff to make it even look remotely professional. And to work with you. I have a great deal of respect for the effort that this takes, especially from others, right? I think we do a great job here, but there's so many people doing great jobs, and it's not as easy as, frankly, it should be. Like there's probably a business model moneymaker to be made from just somebody that really streamlined this into kind of when, Amazon figured out how to get you to buy things with a single click, doing that for streaming and having a YouTube interaction. That said, I love learning new things, right? I love learning new things. And that's one of the reasons I started this channel. And every single day, seemingly, you get a new weird thing from YouTube or you get a new weird thing from somebody else operating within your space. And it's all really, really interesting to learn. Let's see here. Mrs. Hoeg Law, reiterating one of my important positions. I cannot comment on Ackman versus Quantum. I know that is disappointing to a lot of you. I've gotten that request a lot. I can't comment. I apologize for that. But thank you for reiterating that, Mrs. Hoeg Law. You're doing a great job co-counseling for me. Let's see here. Thanks for that. Probably smart to not get on topics like that. This one specifically, I can't comment on. Andrew D'Angelo says, I have a friend who is a professional software engineer and works at Google. He says we're not actually using the internet. We're using Google. Google's a big presence, certainly, and YouTube, obviously, a big part of that, especially for me. Apple Pie Voodoo, say it, Hoeg, it's all voodoo. Power of voodoo? Hoodoo? What? It's the power of the babe. What else do we have here? I think somebody asked Mrs. Hoeg Law if she plays games. She says, I mostly play 2 Point Hospital. You would not believe the number of hours we have on 2 Point Hospital. She's understating this. And Hoeg Law is really good at finding me things I would like. She basically likes a lot of simulation games like 2 Point Hospital. She's playing Jurassic Park 2 Evolution or Jurassic Park Evolution 2, whatever order those words are in, and enjoying putting together parks and things like that. See here. Joshua Ford, Hoeg Law, speaking of this year being great for JRPGs, looks like we also got Soul Hackers 2 on the way. Yeah, no, it's not bad for JRPGs. It's just that there's this hard stop like in July, and the rest of the year is kind of going to be chiller, which is totally fine. And I'm playing all sorts of things that I wouldn't have otherwise played. I think I mentioned it in an earlier video, might even have been yesterday's, that I'm deep into playing Elder Scrolls Online, which I hadn't checked in on in, I don't know, 3 years, 4 years, because my brother, Tom, who will eventually be making his way back to the channel, Two Hoegs Are Better Than One episodes will return at some point. Tom, you're listening to this. I'm trying to get you back on. But he works now at ZeniMax Online, and they make Elder Scrolls Online. So I wanted to say, hey, maybe I can enjoy something that Tom makes. And Tom doesn't work on that, so it's not even really real there. But it's been a great deal of fun. And if you're in the North American server, we can come hang out. You can play cards with me. Like Gwent from Witcher, I'm basically just now using Elder Scrolls Online as a portal to play a different card game, which my daughters laugh at. I love The Sims, says Sparktabulous. Sims, very, very popular game. Interesting business model because they sell a ton of expansions to that game. Pew Pew says Stardew Valley, and we love Stardew Valley in Hoeg House. Absolutely. And I think that's a good starting point to talk about Dunder Mifflin and The Office. We got, what did we do? We did 31 minutes of hanging out. So I think that's a good Friday to me. So hopefully that's okay with the rest of you. I really do like hanging out to start off these episodes. Helps us get up to speed before we really dive into some of this legalese. Co-counsel's looking at me. What's up? The plant game? What is it, like horticulture something? All right. Fair enough. I'm going to have to get her like a separate messaging platform or like just tell her that she can be the only person to DM me on a secret Twitter profile or something. But yes, I think I got horticulture something, which is a puzzle game based on plants and alchemy and things that she really liked. She liked it so much. She went flying through it. Strange Horticulture. That's exactly right. Excellent indie game. A little bit short, but a lot of fun. And we have squeaky door references. The squeaky door will never change. My wife has now committed to not changing it. But otherwise, yes. All right. Now, since she was worried we would actually get into the topics at hand before we discussed her plant game, let's talk about that topic right now. So here is the website from which the headline is derived. This is what was linked to me, and I wanted to give it credit as I do. But as you can see, it's an apocalypse of actually finding information, and I can't get this ad box to stop running at all. The headline being that The Office is being sued because of Dunder Mifflin, which I just wanted to comment on. Is a useful headline. It's good for the thumbnail. It gets you to click on it. It also makes no sense. The Office isn't a thing in this particular universe. It's a fictional concept. It's a TV show. Being sued because of Dunder Mifflin, also a fictional concept. Not terribly helpful. But what is helpful is when we can go and look at some more details here from Deadline, which tends to like to write things like I like to write things in terms of puns and long-winded headlines, and is, like I said, a little bit tabloid-esque in its approach to these questions. But you do see a little bit more information than we would have gotten from Giant Freaking Robot. The Office's Dunder Mifflin is at the center of NBCUniversal trademark infringement lawsuit. Now, it's important to note here that NBCUniversal is the one doing the suing, and the Office's Dunder Mifflin is essentially the trademark that is at the center of this particular infringement lawsuit. This one could have been an episode of The Paper Chase. Ooh, puns right from the start. Paper Chase, of course, being a very famous movie/book about law school, and this being a legal matter about a fictional paper company. I got to respect it, Deadline. I do. NBCUniversal is suing a company it calls a trademark squatter for the alleged fraudulent trademark registration of Dunder Mifflin, the name of the fictional paper company featured in NBC's The Office. So a couple of things come out here. First of all, you see some good reporting from folks that are used to potentially being in the litigatory crosshairs, right? They're not calling this other company a trademark squatter. NBCUniversal is calling them a trademark squatter. And if that isn't good enough, Even though we have already said it's them that's saying it, we're going to put that in quotes. Then we're going to throw an alleged on in front of the fraudulent trademark registration. So they're doing a good job of reporting on things that you need to report on in this way when you're looking at a court-filed complaint. Because you don't know. When you're reporting on these things, you have no idea what the truth is. You know what one side is asserting as the truth, but way too often do various sources, especially in video games, which I'm more familiar with than anything else, refer to them as having happened. Refer to the complaint, which is obviously to the benefit of one side over the other, as effectively true. And we talked a little bit about that in a different context yesterday with respect to the motion to dismiss. It's just super important for everybody to understand what they're actually looking at. Anybody on earth can make a complaint and file it in a court of law, and you can assert anything you want. Now, there are rules. You can get in trouble if you're lying and all those various things. But as far as a reporter is concerned, there's no reason to believe any of it. So you should report on it this way, which is, hey, this seems like an interesting situation, but this is allegations and things like that, which is all very, very useful. The suit filed Friday in U.S. District Court for the Central District of California. And I didn't bring up the lawsuit here. I know we went through the motion to dismiss yesterday. Didn't want to bring up the lawsuit separately here. I just wanted to use this article to talk a little bit about these concepts and not the underlying specifics of the lawsuit. So if you are interested in that, you can go find it. It is a federal court case, but I didn't bring it up in this video. Alleges that the J. Connett Media Group and its owner, J. Connett, checks out, built a business based on registering trademarks belonging to others. You see those quotes again, in order either to sell the marks back to their rightful owners or to profit from quote unquote consumer confusion by offering branded merchandise associated with a popular TV show, movie, or video game with which it has no legitimate connection. So the allegation here from NBCUniversal is that this company goes out there at some point in time and says, Dunder Mifflin, that's us. Wayland-Yutani, that's us. Shinra Corporation, that's us. And takes names, brands, trademarks that are otherwise developed entirely fictionally for someone other's commercial use, like this case, right? The Office has Dunder Mifflin as a fictional company named, I think there's even a scene standing in front of the sign in the very first episode of the US version of The Office. So NBC has been using this forever and ever. They made it up to use it for this purpose. And in general, we're going to take a look at the statute in just a second. You're not allowed to just go and say that thing that exists that people have some affection for that could otherwise be used to sell tote bags or sweatshirts or what have you. I'd like it. I'd like to take it. No, that's generally not allowed. Much like copyright, trademark actually affixes the right to it as soon as you use it. You don't have as strong of the ability to protect it. There are benefits to registering it. But as soon as you make something, as soon as you use a trademark in commerce, as soon as you write a book for copyright purposes, you have that intellectual property affixed to it. It's automatic. And then you register it in order to get those benefits. Now, if you don't, and there's a timing issue and there's a fight about that, you could find yourself in trouble. Here, however, NBC broadcast this nationally and broadcast it years before this a filing for the words Dunder Mifflin appears to have taken place. According to the lawsuit, the defendants registered the Dunder Mifflin name with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office about 6 years ago, which, if you're doing your math at home, is notably well after the pilot episode of The Office in the U.S., which happened in, I think, the early 2000s, in order to market hoodies, shirts, jackets, and other apparel. So this company says, hey, Dunder Mifflin is ours, and we're going to put it on clothing. NBCUniversal says it tried to register the faux company's name in 2020, which is an interesting portion of this story, right? So they didn't even try to register this particular name until right now. And why that is, we don't know. New show, other branded merchandise, we have no idea. But its application was rejected because what the trademark office does is they say, okay, you're saying that you use this first, it's your trademark, but we have a registration from 6 years ago, which is also outside of some of the normal challenge timelines. And it just means that NBC wasn't monitoring for this particular filing. And so we're out of the challenge timelines. We're going to have to sue over it. The lawsuit aims to end J. Connett's media's use of the Dunder Mifflin name and to destroy any remaining branded merchandise. The plaintiffs, NBCUniversal Media LLC, Universal Television LLC, and Universal Studios Licensing, also seek unspecified damages and any profits already derived from the sales of the merchandise. It's unspecified because they wouldn't have the accounting they would need. We don't know how successful this company was in selling hoodies, shirts, jackets, and other apparel. We also don't know whether they even did, based on at least this description from Deadline, because one of the things that you would do to get a trademark that you don't otherwise use is potentially tell the trademark office that you're going to use it on these various things in order to file for it. But there might not have been any sales. Based on the Ricky Gervais-fronted UK series, The Office aired from 2005, there you go, a little bit more than 6 years ago, to 2013 on NBC. Steve Carell, John Krasinski, Jenna Fisher, Rainn Wilson, and others led the ensemble comedy about the people in the daily grind at the Scranton, Pennsylvania branch of Dunder Mifflin Paper Company. The sitcom remains wildly popular in syndication and streaming. It really is wildly popular. It was one of Netflix's most popular shows when they had that license, and it's one of the reasons that NBC, I think, even probably tried their Peacock experiment, was that they pulled back The Office over there and are using it to be the centerpiece for that platform as well. So if you like The Office and you want to buy Dunder Mifflin paraphernalia, this is all about NBCUniversal trying to go get the rights to the name they created back. And if all that sounds like NBCUniversal has a pretty good case, that's because they do. So when you're filing for a trademark, there's a couple of things that you have to do. This is the Section 15 USC 1051 that talks about the application. And as a disclaimer, I'm not the lawyer that you ask to file your trademark applications. I just had a conversation with a prospective client about this yesterday. Folks ask me about this, and always I tell them, if you're working with a third party, you're working with a government official, like the USPTO, generally speaking, from a legal perspective, you want someone that is doing that on a regular basis. You want someone that potentially knows the examiner's name, that has been down this road, that knows their quirks and preferences, what have you. And so I always recommend boutique firms for registrations of trademarks and patents and copyrights and things like that. But we all know the rules, as the lawyers do, and I know more than enough to be dangerous on this particular topic. So 15 USC 1051 says, look, the owner of a trademark used in commerce may request registration of its trademark, which makes total sense, right? Hey, if you're using a trademark, we already told you it fixes automatically. You want to register it, fantastic. You can do that, and that's okay. If you have an intention to use the trademark, you can file for it. A person who has a bona fide intention, under circumstances showing the good faith of such person, to use a trademark in commerce may request registration of its trademark on the principal register. So you see the bona fide, you see under circumstances showing the good faith of such person. One of the issues that you could potentially have with this, and it's an issue that the USPTO has dealt with historically at length, are people that go and they file for a trademark and they say, oh, we're going to use it for this, and then they never do. And there never was an intention to, right? One version of this business model, as NBC alleges, is that you go and you say, oh yeah, I'm going to use it on lunchboxes and bicycles. It's going to be awesome. And then you just kind of sit back and wait for the company that actually owns the right to pay you some money to otherwise get out and get the trademark that they need, because a lawsuit like the one that you just saw filed is going to cost some money. And so in general, there's a business model where you can quote unquote squat on trademarks and say, look, you can pay me less than you'd have to pay your attorneys to actually go through this process. And if that sounds a little bit extortative and not a great business model, not something that we should be looking fondly upon, you're right about that as well. But there are these gray areas that you can take advantage of. I don't think that they're fantastic. I think that there are reforms that could deal with at least some of this stuff. But the statute here is trying to say if you don't have that bona fide intention, then this isn't a legitimate application. You also have to say certain things to the USPTO, like that the person making the verification believes that he or she, or the juristic person on whose behalf he or she makes the verification, is entitled to use the mark, right? Is it already infringing on somebody else's mark? And you have to say that to the best of the verifier's knowledge and belief, no other person has the right to use such mark in commerce, either in the identical form thereof or in such near resemblance thereto as to be likely when used on or in connection with the goods of such other person to cause confusion or to cause mistake or to deceive. So when NBCUniversal comes in and alleges, aw snap, that there's an issue with this particular registration, that it was, I believe, allegedly fraudulent, it is because they have a good case. In 2005, they established this name. They used it directly in commerce. They sold advertising on those shows that used that name within it. It is absolutely connected with their Office product, and people know that, that have any interaction with that product at all. And this company wouldn't appear to have any relation to it and registered it only 6 years ago after the end of The Office on NBC. And so when you look at these particular issues, it seems that NBCUniversal has a pretty good point to be made. In terms of the use in commerce concept, that date concept, it means when you used it on goods or services that you first attached it to. And when you have to make those promises to the USPTO, that in and of itself is an issue. And is probably a part of that lawsuit, if we're being honest. The deadline didn't otherwise summarize for us that there's an argument to be made that says not only is it fraudulent because they didn't do what they were going to say they were going to do, maybe, but also it's obvious that it was ours first. And they knew it was ours first. Everybody knew it was ours first. They wouldn't just randomly come up with the name Dunder Mifflin and potentially even logo stuff, depending on how they filed for its registration, and go forward with this. So this is the kind of thing that can happen, but obviously it makes it in a deadline. It makes it into other kind of pop culture news items because it's interesting, right? It's funny. There's all sorts of things that are funny about this, including the fact that NBC apparently didn't try to trademark it until 2020. That's interesting and certainly reflects maybe a change in approach or strategy from NBCUniversal on its face, and that people are going and squatting. And potentially, if you go and you find something that has a Dunder Mifflin brand on clothing right now, it's not actually authorized by who you might think, NBC, or even a third-party licensor. So these kinds of stories are fun to me. They are the kind of Friday casual stories that I like to look at. No bad reporting here. We're not analyzing things to within an inch of its life, but still some interesting things that we can pull out, including, if you haven't, go watch The Paper Chase. So just a light little headline today, and maybe on Fridays in the future, we will do maybe a couple of those because they do tend to be shorter in scope and length. But otherwise, I just wanted to make sure that I gave a feel for what I would love to do on these Friday streams. Upside Down says, I used to work at NBC, and says the NBC store does have the shirts. Now, that's interesting as part of this lawsuit as well, right? It is their trademark. There's no question about that in terms of common law. So they would have been okay. They would have felt fine selling those T-shirts. It's interesting to see when that commerce might have started, because I'd be willing to bet it was earlier than 2016 or 2017, depending on when we're talking about for this other filing. That in and of itself could be evidence. And that's very, very interesting to me. Let's see here. I've seen Dunder Mifflin T-shirts. Now I want to know if NBC did it or the other company. Well, you just heard reference to the fact the NBC store does sell these things. So chances are it is also NBC. But if you've seen other ones, or maybe even ones that don't look as high quality, it always depends on what they're doing with these logos. It might not be NBCUniversal itself. And if somebody else is selling them, what they're looking for, what Deadline kind of describes in short form, is they're looking for a disgorgement of those profits and then penalties for the infringement on those various things. And it'll be interesting to see, how that goes. Ordinarily, this is very threatening. You got a big multinational company coming at you, and you're looking for kind of a settlement. But it is interesting. Emily says, so they don't check before granting the registration of the trademark and just give it to whoever gets there first. Seems like a great plan. They do check. That's why they're called examiners. But sometimes things slip through the cracks, right? And if you didn't have any familiarity with the office at all, it just wasn't your thing, there's no reason necessarily that Dunder Mifflin would pop out to you. So if you find an examiner that actually looks at that and says, yes, that seems all legitimate. We have looked in our database. We've looked at a USPTO search and not found any other registration for it. You're good to go. And that's why very often what you see, and this is where leaks come from, you see companies register everything under the sun that could possibly relate to their game, movie, TV show, or otherwise at the very start of when it's going to be used in that show or other pop culture item. Is you put it out there, you make sure it's registered. Bare minimum, you block this kind of concept where somebody just slips through and this happens. Honestly, most folks, if they aren't going to be trolling your trademark, are just going to make illicit things on the side and hope you don't come after them. They aren't going to actually try to file a registered trademark with the federal government because, honestly, it's clear that they don't necessarily have the right to any of this. And so this is kind of the big move to, as I said, as NBC accuses them of, to try to sell it back for what would be kind of nickels on the dollar for what the lawyers would otherwise charge. So it's a business model of sorts, but it's not a terribly productive one. Lemon Fresh, what? Someone copyrighted a made-up game in the American version of a British Ricky Gervais show? I'm confused. Yes, no, they trademarked the name of the fictional company of the U.S. adaptation TV show of the British Ricky Gervais show. So there you go. Jane Allen says, I love wordplay and quaint turns of phrase too. Yep, words are fun. I will stand by that forever. Absolutely. We've got co-counsel here giving her favorite seemingly N64 games. I didn't even tell her that Pokemon Puzzle League is on the Switch now. I would never buy anything from Shinra Corporation. That would be a bad idea. They aren't great stewards of the environment, are they? Well, in any event, it's a Final Fantasy VII reference to those who don't recognize the Shinra Corporation. I also used Wayland Yutani, which of course is the corporation from the Alien universe. Lots of fun evil corporations out there in fiction, of course. Someone dropped the ball. NBC has a store in the building selling all their premium products. It could be. It could be that they just said, hey, we don't even need to spend the money on trademarks because it's unlikely that people are going to come after us. And then they changed their mind in 2020. I don't know what their policies are. You can have different intellectual property protection strategies. They might even switch to brand protection, third party counsel on this kind of stuff. And you can change what it is that you want to do. What's weird is I think I actually have some really old Dunder Mifflin merch and it would have come from NBC. Yeah. I mean, they're well within their rights to sell it once they've created it, but they don't have the right to police it exactly. I'm not going to go too far into this without the registered trademark. So it's possible that they're trying to register it to police it better because they've seen an uptick in kind of black market Dunder Mifflin sales, which sounds much more exciting than it is black market fictional paper company sales. Oh yeah. Big market. Let's see. What else do we have here? Are copyright laws specific to a country? Yes, but there are treaties. What if I decide to do the same from Switzerland? Would it be an issue? Depends on where you're selling it into, but I would consult with counsel is my recommendation. Can't give formal legal advice here. Like so many answers in the legal landscape, it depends on the facts and circumstances. And that's why ethically, we don't talk about things. That's why videos aren't legal advice. That's why they don't create an attorney-client relationship, is because in all honesty, a lawyer would have to sit down with you and say, all right, what exactly are we talking about? And that's how you get into those situations. Could they trademark Jim and Pam? I'm wondering at what point the asset becomes subject to trademark. No, Jim and Pam would be descriptive. That would be character names. And I'm saying this as not a USPTO trademark examiner. So take that with a grain of salt. But no, you can't just trademark everything. It's because Dunder Mifflin is a nonsense set of words that don't mean anything that they can trademark it as affiliated with them and the office. But I get too far afield here, and maybe one of my trademark colleagues at LawTube or otherwise will pop in and talk to me about that. What if you trademarked Death Star Industries? Who'd come after you? Death Star is owned by Disney. You could probably see that reference when you buy a Death Star toy or what have you. But you'd have to actually go and examine it, right? So you'd go in, you'd look at what trademarks are registered, you'd look at how they're used. But I know, Death Star isn't your creation, and you could potentially use it in a different way. If it's not the Death Star, you could have a Death Star. I mean, there's all sorts of things that you could get into here, but that's why it's facts and circumstances based, and I can't give formal hypothetical advice on this stuff, frankly, because I'd be referring you out in any event. Let's see what else we got here. Chibi Moat says, yeah, they can vary per country. Yes, that's exactly right. But depending on things, some countries take precedence. I did work for an Australian that did me dirty for Twitch. Being a U.S. company, my laws came first. Yeah, there are different jurisdictions. It's not exactly priority. It's where the jurisdiction lives. And there's all sorts of questions there. But yes, definitely intellectual property rights protection varies by jurisdiction. And then you have essentially compacts and treaties and agreements between countries that they'll acknowledge certain things that are otherwise registered in other places. So it works, but not well. It's all kind of cobbled together. Was just thinking of The Office, says Flynn. Great timing. Wouldn't this have been covered by the trademark of the show? Did that perhaps expire and snapped up immediately by other people? Heard of that happening, especially with web domains. No, the trademarks are separate. The Office is trademarked, I would imagine, although it is just descriptive, but it is specifically the TV show. You'd have to actually trademark everything that relates to it that you want trademarked, including Dunder Mifflin. That has to be done as a separate process in order to inform the world that it's registered, right? The whole registration process is not just lawyers trying to make magic spells and force you to do things that are jumping through hoops in order to get paid. It's designed to give the public notice of what things are protected and otherwise to have that conversation from there. I think it's likely that Michael Scott dropped the ball on the trademark duties. Yeah. If Michael Scott were in charge at NBC, there probably would be issues with the trademarks and trademark deadlines. Love him, great salesperson, but an issue. Michael Scott, for those that don't know, is the character name of the Steve Carell character and the branch manager of the Scranton, Pennsylvania branch of Dunder Mifflin in The Office. It's like a certain school trademarking the word "the." That's right, and they won that trademark. And I didn't discuss it too much at length, but yes, the Ohio State University is officially the Ohio State University and has trademarked the in that capacity, even though it is otherwise the word "the" to you and I. So I think that's about it for this particular headline. These questions are fantastic. Upside Down also references Disney here. Disney is the devil with their trademarks. They sure are. Oh my God, we have a guest. It's Marc.
Oh hey,
you just missed us talking about this story.
Oh no, I missed it.
We're glad to have you here.
Oh hey, sorry to join, man. It's
Marc. If people don't know you, what is your background? What do you do, man?
You mean in general?
Well. No, not just like what you hang out with and do on the weekends or things like that, but in your legal capacity on your YouTube channel, why you might be of particular interest to this story.
Well, I'm an entertainment lawyer by trade. I try not to do that as much as possible and develop TV and film instead, but sometimes it gets to you. So I worked in Los Angeles for a long time doing that, and also I guess particularly to this case, I almost became a trademark squatter.
You did.
I did.
Now that's interesting because that's a specialty. That's all you would be doing if you went that route usually.
Yeah. And it was actually in a very particular industry. You know what? I realized, I don't know if my mic's bad. I'm not in my headphones, but
you sound fine to me.
Okay. How about now?
You still sound as fine as you did before.
Wonderful. Yeah, no, it was absolutely a specialty. And the industry I was considering going into was super specialized. Actually, the reason I was going to move into it is because trademark squatting didn't exist in that industry.
Right.
And because, as I'm sure you probably discussed, copyright, squatting and all those sort of different IP rights, it's much more common to do patent squatting and things like that. But trademark, it's a little more nebulous, right? What determines it, because it can run for as long as possible. It's the one IP that can run forever. So because of that, there are specific regulations about it. And when you can use it, you have to continue to use it. So it gets weird. But
right. People get confused about that, right? People are often asking me, I heard that they had to take that Twitch stream down or whatever to protect their copyright. It's like, oh no. You're under no obligation to be an asshole on copyright. You are a little bit on trademark.
Right. And that's kind of it's a very odd little thing. And so it wasn't as common. But I was going to do it actually when I was living in California for marijuana trademarks.
All right.
Because basically the idea is, the huge thing is, where do trademark regulations come from? If you talked about it, right? It comes through either the Patent Trademark Office of the federal government or very little cobbled together state trademark regulations that are only jurisdictional. They're only geographical. If you get a California trademark copyright protection, it might only last for like 100 miles outside Los Angeles. Right.
Oh, yeah. No, I didn't go into any details here, Marc. No, we did broad strokes.
Well, basically, the idea is marijuana is not protectable by the Patent Trademark Office because it's federally illegal. So if an enterprising person maybe saw on the horizon eventually the federal government legalizing marijuana, then maybe you could use all of these state trademark regulations and different things that you are doing to find that you have gotten the trademark, because the people who might have been using it a state away or 2 states away had no way to actually protect their trademark in your area. And when they want to expand their business, now all of a sudden you have taken Dunder Mifflin out from under them without them recognizing it.
No, and that makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's one of the really interesting areas. So, yeah, Mark, that speaks to what I've been doing as well, which is when all of these states started to approve these things, you had all hell break loose for people that wanted to start, whether it was dispensaries or agriculture companies and all these things. And, banks didn't know what to do or what they could or couldn't do. The various offices in the various states didn't know what they could do. As you rightly say, anything that touched federal had a problem. And so that makes a ton of sense. No, as I said at the top of this video, my design for this on Fridays is essentially casual, mostly hangouts, chatting kind of superficially about fun stuff. And I liked this story for that purpose because, folks that have never heard of this or the issue or Dunder Mifflin, we basically just talked about how you apply first use in commerce, how this is very much looks like squatting, especially since it looks like it was filed in like 2019 or 2018, something like that. Versus the start of The Office, where, as I said, you got Steve Carell standing in front of a Dunder Mifflin sign in like the fall of 2005.
Yeah, this company literally applied for it in like 2016, 2017. Like the show had been over for years. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. So no, I wanted you to pop in because I as I said, I refer this out when I talk to folks. I said, look, you want the guy that knows the examiner's name. You want him to know exactly what the quirks are, how you get it through. You'll always get a better result. I refer you out to Boutique for registration of copyrights, trademarks, and patents every single time.
Look at you in-house. Look at you. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm not an in-house lawyer. I never have been an in-house lawyer. What I was a big firm lawyer, and that was you call up the practice group or you do whatever. And so when you go and you create Hoeg Law and you say, well, I still function on. You want to talk about tax structuring? I know a guy. I want let's talk about trademark registration. You're just going to get better results. And mostly from my experience in big law, like all of my colleagues, or at least all the colleagues that I liked, went off and created their own like little offshoots. And then we just create kind of the small firm referrals that we were doing anyway. So the folks that I refer people to, I've worked with for 20 years, but I met them and worked with them at big law.
And I don't know if people know that or if your audience knows that, but that's basically, what happens in law is you kind of, especially if you work at a big place, if you're not at a solo prac or a place that has to do everything yourself, is that the only way you get work is by creating specializations for yourself, is by being the person to go to on this thing. And so then everybody, all the Rick Hoegs of the world, hear that thing and they go, oh, let's talk to Mark and send this over to Mark. He knows this. And so then you have this entire network of people who do not, they know one thing. Each person knows one thing, but all collectively, you all know everything, right? Is kind of the idea.
That's right. Yeah. And that's the story I give. I have a number of stories about how the channel started and, how Hoeg Law started and things like that. But 2008 rolls around, I'm doing venture capital and venture capital dries up. And so I become the SaaS guy because we didn't do much SaaS. You talk to lawyers, especially at a big law firm who, need help turning their computers on sometimes. And you say, all right, so this is like a software contract, but not. And we should have a practice group doing this. And so, that's what I did. I did SaaS stuff because I like computers and I like technology. And you're exactly right. And I can still think, it's like, yeah, you get into the weird tax weeds, like some bizarre thing. And there's the one guy that like is in the back corner and can recite the tax code by heart. And it's like, yeah, that's how the firm works.
And for any of y'all's viewers who want to litigate before the Supreme Court, and that's their goal, it's the exact same way to get there. Is there are these certain specialized areas that only few people act in, but are frequently litigated at the Supreme Court. And so if you become an expert in, say, water law, right, then, or admiralty law, there is a much higher percentage that you're going to be able to eventually go before the Supreme Court because there's only X amount of people in the, and you just pick your specialty in water law, your like weird one thing that in water law.
Riparian rights.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? That's going to be litigated at some point, and there's only going to be 5 people in the world that the client's going to call.
Oh, that's exactly right. Like the southwestern states now all fighting over river rights. Like that's going to the Supremes at some point. So there you go.
Yep. And so and I can name like the 12 people who would go up on a riparian rights issue. Like I just know them. Like that's just how it goes.
No, not SaaS, like SaaS. SaaS like software as a service. Although I can be pretty sassy depending on the day you catch me on. But I appreciate it. This is a reference to bird law. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Right. But you wouldn't believe it because especially when you go, when I create Hoeg Law, I've already expanded from what I was doing when I was at my former employer. And so you have to do that because you're reacting and you got to keep the lights on and children fed and everything else. You're like, all right, well, that's close enough. We'll learn that. And learning is fun. And you can learn those things. But yeah, when you're fully ensconced in the firm, you're essentially given instructions you're going to hand this off. You're going to feed this practice group and this is what you're going to do. And if you're doing what I did, which was essentially corporate generalist, venture capital, mergers and acquisitions, you're going to go find us clients, son. It's like, okay, all right. You don't tell us how to do that at all. And I'm a baby when I come out of law school, but we'll figure it out. It'll be fine.
Baby Hoeg. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. Imagining you practicing for as long as you say you've been practicing, I imagine that you got out of law school when you were like 16.
So. It's very funny. No, I think I just play young. No, I got out. So I graduated in 2005. So that's, that's 17 years in practice right now. And I spent most of that at big law firms. So I did it for, I think 13 years. I look back at that time and I actually say this to my wife all the time. I say, how did I do that? like literally, how did I do that? Because I remember kind of, you should really be trying to get to 3,100 hours billed. And are you going to be a firm man or a family man? Like I remember all this stuff. And one of my biggest memories is coming home from like a December 3 closings over Christmas kind of situation and rolling into the house at like, I don't even know, 2 a.m. with like a Wendy's bag and like just dropping it on the floor and being like, what are we doing? Because the thing is, after a certain point, you're just making the firm money. You're just killing yourself and that's not coming back to you.
Well, that's the big thing is that if you are killing yourself and you don't see that you're going to get a part of that pot, like it's just like, what am I doing? I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if you remember my story or whatever, but I was like the folk hero of my 3L year because I went to a big firm, 2L summer associate and came back and said, no, thanks. I would rather die than go back. So I am a lot poorer than you are, I'm sure, Rick. But
I don't know. Starting your own firm is really, I don't even want to look at like the comparison points between where my salaries would have been, but I'm a lot happier. I will tell you that. But yeah, no, you have different motivations, right? I get out of law school. Yeah. I want to kill the debts. Like I want to hit the debts. And like, I just threw everything, at the debts. And then it's like, okay, well, I'm halfway through. Let's make partner. And then I think literally the moment I hit partner in 2014, like a light switch goes off and says, okay, you did it. Fantastic. You crossed the threshold. You can say you were made a full equity partner at the biggest law firm in Michigan. Now what? Right? Like, is this what you want? And it's like I'm driving home from the partner dinner and I'm like, we got to leave.
Oh, I love it. Oh, I love it. Yeah, you just did it to get there,
You set goals, right? I don't know. Different people are wired different ways, but I'm like, all right, let's go convince this group of people that they should name me partner. And so, I spent the next, whatever that is, 6 years, from there, after I get the debts paid off, saying, yeah, let's go prove that point. And then like the moment it happened, I was like, let's do something else. And then I start the firm in 2016 and then I'm like, this is good, but I don't want to market the way that, I used to. I don't want to do the venture capital investor cocktail circuit. I don't like it. So let's figure out something else. And at that point, the way I tell the story is that there's there's a Patreon for a podcast that I listen to called the Easy Allies, do video game stuff from a garage in California. And they've got a patron slot that has marketing on it. And I say, all right, we'll buy that for a little while. And I buy that, and they have a great reaction. Like, is that a law firm? And we do that for a little while. And then they start asking me questions about video game related legal stuff that gets pretty popular. And then I have a couple clients that join the firm that have YouTube channels. And I'm like, okay. And they're asking me about data analytics and like how YouTube works and robots and COPPA. You know, they're asking me about all these like weird things. Right. I have no idea, but let's go see how hard this is. So I'm doing this on the other side. Let's do one of those. And so some of the very first content you see on the channel is I ask them, can I just take the clip from you talking about my answers and edit it and put it over here? And they say yes. You know, they're lovely people. And then I start practicing, you know, putting things together and putting videos together. But your first stuff is better than mine by far, because if you look at those early videos, it's essentially like the Microsoft Music Player, and like me using like zoom ins and then like cutting off where I want it to be from just like the stuff that is built into titles that you can put on like your little tiny Windows video things. So it's all. The early thumbnail was just me cutting off the triangle portion of like that, you know, that like neon green italicized titling that you put on the bottom of things from the Windows Movie Player.
That just gives you cred. This is all cred, man.
Oh,
you're OG.
It's all bootstrapped. You know, it's like I wanted to not, you know, get into buying, you know, $1,000 video editing program or whatever. So it's like, what can I do with the vehicles I have? The biggest expense that I had at the start was I went and asked the Easy Allies, you know, what is the microphone setup that would work? Like, I don't need a soundboard. I don't need to get crazy. And then, you know, they recommended me the USB mic that I still use. Now I have 3 of them now, but it still works fantastically. And I'm so thankful to them. They answered any question that I had.
Well, you know, it sounds a lot like my venture into being a game designer, being like a board game or, you know, a card game designer.
Right? That's right. Marc has made a card game that I think is going public very soon, right?
Yeah. Indie Boards and Cards, the company that makes Coup and Avalon and Werewolf, they'll be releasing it, you know, who knows? It's up to them, but I expect Q1 next year. But it was the same thing that I had never ventured into it before. It was not something I'd ever done, but like I knew people. I worked at Magic the Gathering for a while. So like, you know, you know enough people and you talk to them and then you figure it out and you make it happen, you know? And if there's one thing that lawyers are actually good at, truly good at, is that we are taught how to learn things, you know, and where to look to find something and how to take a lot of new information and systematize it and learn it, right? And so it's not surprising to me, Rick, that you could pick up YouTube very quickly or pick up gaming law very quickly, despite having never done it before, because that's literally what we were trained to do, you know?
Yeah, I often say that, you know, if I'm really tooting my own horn, am I really saying, hey, these are my gifts? It's researching really, really quickly and thoroughly. Like that's what I can do. You know, people talk about virtual legality episodes. Like sometimes I'm talking about topics where, and I will say this in the video, it's like, I don't have experience with this directly. Here's what the statutes say. Here's how you interpret this. And then, you know, this is where it could go. But yeah, I can put that together. I know how to do that. And that's, if you have a good lawyer, that lawyer is sometimes saying, I have no idea, but I think I know where I can find it. I mean, like that's a good lawyer. You don't want the lawyer that always knows exactly the answer to whatever random thing you're asking them about, because no human being on earth does. So, no, that's absolutely great. Although I might pick your brain. I never know. I might make a board game or a card game myself.
You know, you just figure it out, right? You just figure it out. You got an idea, you make it happen. That's, you know, whatever. That's the life of the entrepreneur, I suppose.
I want to gamify contract negotiation. We can work on this together.
Oh my God, that would be a lot of fun. I mean, it already is a game, right? I mean, I bet you we could. Oh, my brain is spinning. I'm not even talking because I'm just like spinning with ideas right now.
See?
Oh my God.
We'll do that on DM. We don't want this going out on the stream.
No way.
Obviously, this is where we're getting our gold-plated toilets. So we're just going to wait on that for just a second.
If there's one thing I know about board game design, it has gold-plated toilets involved.
That's right. I mean, that's what we know.
All
indie board game developers are insanely well off. Like that, I know that for a fact. Right? Like everybody is Isaac Childress out there just killing it with his $16 million Kickstarters or whatever. So, yeah.
Sorry, I'm trying to hide the frown right now. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the thing of it. That's the thing of it. But you got to do. Life's too short. You got to do what you find fun and interesting. And I said this before, but I'm so glad you brought it up as a topic here. Is that learning is fun, and it's like terrifying because you have no idea what you're doing. But that's the fun of it. And you learn this stuff and you learn YouTube. My biggest fear, by the way, was that like I was aimed at trying to get to 100,000 and get the cool play button and everything else. And my biggest fear was that if I would do the same thing that I did when I made Partner, which is like, all right, what do we got now? And I didn't. I still love this stuff. I still love chatting with you all. I really like Hangouts and Headlines because we do so much hanging out, much to some people's chagrin. Other people love it. We're going to do a lot of stuff here. Absolutely. Fast forward the crap out of me. Heck, downvote me if you don't like it. That's still feedback. I love it. Be constructive if you would. Yeah, I think this is so much fun that we're having in this space. And you got to love to do it. But I was saying this to you when we were trying to convince you to start doing some YouTube content, Mark, was like, there are days when you put up a video that you worked hard on, that you put your time in, and you go and you check on it, and it's, minus 35 subscribers. And it's like, you just have to kind of get used to that grind, and you have to do it for its own sake. And if you're putting out quality content and you're proud of it and you like it, I find a lot of fulfillment in doing this and having these conversations, even when it says, minus 30, because some of them will say plus 3,000,
even when your work created net negative.
It is, right? Well, net negative is funny because it's like people could be leaving for other reasons. Like we have like some natural attrition coming off the trial right now, which is totally fine. It's like we're not covering exactly the same things that you might have enjoyed when we were covering those things directly. So we have kind of like a natural attrition happening, and then it kind of covers. It's like, well, maybe that video did that, or maybe like the whole channel is in this going plus this number, but it's offset by this, and it's just all the analytics there are very difficult to read in any event, and so you just got to do what you like doing. I wanted to talk about Dunder Mifflin today because I really like The Office, and trademark squatting is interesting, and I want to do some hangouts on Fridays more than even like serious headlines, and then sometimes I'm going to talk about Final Fantasy 14 billboards, and sometimes I'm going to talk about Dobbs. I mean, like, this is a channel that is me more than anything. And so some people are going to like that, some people are not. But like, that's what's going to keep it going. So that's what it is. If I just start trying to chase the algorithm or getting those plus numbers up, like it's going to die because I can't justify that.
That's smart. And first, so one, I need you to promise me something. If you Hoeg yourself out of this, right? If you get the play button and you're like, outies or whatever, you have to
Red
promise
Diamond would probably be like that. I get the Red Diamond play button, 10 million subscribers. At that point, I might be like, you know what? I accomplished this thing.
So and you know what? Yeah, absolutely. When you become whatever,
PewDiePie,
I was thinking whatever. Yes, PewDiePie's fine enough. I don't want you to become PewDiePie.
No. Unlikely. Still reasonable minds over here.
You don't do. Again, this is video game. You might not know this, but I'm guessing some of your followers do. Husky Starcraft. Was a very famous kind of shout commentator in the early StarCraft 2 days. We're talking 2010, 2011, 2012. He was going around the country. He was making videos. He got whatever YouTube numbers you could expect to get from being a very, a streamer. And then he just disappeared one day. And not only did he disappear, then he just deleted all the hundreds of thousands of hours of StarCraft commentary he had done.
Really? Just put it all down.
And he said it without mention of why he did it. Eventually 4 years later, like I think a couple years ago, he maybe came out and said something that he's just the type of person that when he's over something, he's over it. And so he was done. I don't know if maybe there was something hidden in the archives he didn't want people to find. But his thing was, he was like, look, that's just how I treat life. When I'm done, I'm done. And now it's actually a very sad story because he's become one of those like lifestyle YouTubers with his girlfriend now, where they do like, camping in their backyard or whatever. But yeah, all I'm saying is
that's the plan for the transition of the channel. Mrs. Hoeg Law. We're going to be doing stuff. We're going to be walking through aisles of Walmart or whatever. We're going to be talking about fashion products. It's going to be great.
And that is fine. All
Sure
I'm
it
saying
is.
is
Different structure, different folks.
don't delete the old stuff. That's all. Is that you have a treasure trove. You have created a trove of incredible content, and I don't want to have to, subpoena the Library of Congress basically to get my backlog Hoeg videos. So that's
No, I
that's my
appreciate it,
point.
Mark. I don't see any reason why I would do that. But yeah, no, I'm proud of everything I put up.
Yeah, the guy who became partner and then leaves the big law firm. Yeah, I see it. You don't see it. I see it. And two, hey, is the American Office any good? I heard it's good.
I like The Office, although it, like all kind of American sitcoms, I would say, at least of a certain vintage, it goes too long. It gets too caricatured. Sure. But like seasons like 2 and 3 of The Office, especially, are like really, really strong. Season 1 is them trying to rip off the British Office directly, which doesn't translate terribly well because Ricky Gervais is a bit more, I don't know, biting. It's a bit more of a scathing kind of comedy, and Steve Carell, I don't know that he ever comes across as super comfortable with that. And then they find his voice. And then Michael Scott is great. And of course, you have Jim and Pam, which is, one of the better handled kind of romance plot lines in an American sitcom, especially of that era. So I haven't watched it in a little bit. I don't know how it like holds up, but like season 2, I remember being one of my favorite seasons when I watched it live.
Yeah, I watched the pilot because I was a huge fan of the British Office, and I watched the pilot and I was like, this doesn't work, and then I just dropped it, and so now I just missed whatever 10 years of American.
It's new
culture.
to you though, right? That was NBC's old tagline.
I remember that. Oh gosh.
Yeah, those first 6 episodes are like the trial run, and I think it's like just British plot lines that they try to run. And then I would even recommend for people that are interested in The Office, just start at episode 1, season 2, because whatever they did to completely wash their writer's room or whatever plan happened in that summer, they fixed it. And even episode 1 of season 2 is strong. And then they go from there. So
it's a really incredible story on the cultural differences between the UK and the US, right? It's just that I don't think that Steve Carell can't do it. And in fact, you look at some early Steve Carell work and he can be that sort of uncomfortable. But like, we don't want to watch that.
Well, don't get me wrong. The Office in America is very uncomfortable, but it's like, it's a bit different than that kind of, I don't know how to describe it properly. The British humor
it's sad.
It's changed over to American humor.
The UK Office is sad, and it's like I can't get my wife to watch it because it's just like, why would I want to watch these people just being sad all the time? I'm like, because it's funny. They're like, no, it's not funny.
It is. And what's funny is if you ask somebody, it's like that's where the American Office fails. So like the Americanization of The Office, at least over the 9 years, is it starts out with Jim in the same place. Oh, I work at a paper company in the era of digital technology, everything else. But then it gets into kind of normal American sitcom rhythms. The guys that you like are going to win the day most of the time.
Yeah, sure.
But it might be uncomfortable getting there. So it is the Americanization, which is right to me. You try to bring over The Office or Coupling or whatever, and you just do it sentence for sentence. It never works terribly well.
Well, and Coupling is such a funny example to bring because Coupling was literally the UK version of Friends. So it was so weird that they made Friends in the UK and then America re-imported Friends from the UK.
Hey.
Yeah, that was well said, by the way, that like the UK's problem is that they end shows too early, and the American problem is that they let shows go on too long. Like,
yeah, I've always
they
thought
should voluntarily end it.
The UK model is super interesting and always has been to me, with their shorter seasons and approaches, and the fact that they have series that have like, oh, it was 6 years between this season and this season, and we're like, we brought it back. But it's not like a big reboot or anything. That's just where season 3 was. It was just people came back together 5 years later. And I don't think that American companies are good at it yet. I think of the Disney Plus series that do 6 episodes. And it's like, I have major problems with what they try to do with pacing. And like, they have filler episodes in a 6-episode series. Like, they're still built on like US modeling. And it's like, no, you can't, you're supposed to get nothing, no fat on the 6-episode UK series, ideally.
Well, can I explain? I can explain why.
Sure. Shoot.
This is all contract entertainment law. It's because the way that the US contract structures are built for television is that the producers, who are generally also the creators, right? If you produce season 1, you get basically zero money in the first season. You end up foregoing most of your cut, most of your percentages, to getting the actors and to getting good quality crew. So if you are the producer yourself, you are disincentivized to make something great in the first season. What you want to make is something that looks like it can be great 5 seasons out, because that's when you really and so one of the biggest things that was interesting to me when I was in the industry and changing is that, like, that's why miniseries and like small time 6-episode things are just a very recent thing, because the contract structure to make that didn't exist. That's why Big Little Lies, despite the book ending at the end of season 1, you still had a season 2, is because the producers needed to make money. That's why The Leftovers, where the book of The Leftovers ends after season 1, you have 2 more seasons of The Leftovers. Hell, The Terror on what was that, AMC? The Terror, the second season doesn't even relate to the book anymore. It's just a new story that isn't even with the characters from the book. That's all because the producers are trying to find some way to actually make money and capitalize, because our system doesn't reward the creators in the first season. It rewards them with higher back end in later seasons.
That is interesting. That is interesting. But it still doesn't explain Obi-Wan to me, Mark.
I have not watched Obi-Wan. I can't comment on it. I'm sorry.
I just want high production value, well-crafted Star Wars. Damn it.
Well, and you want it in TV form.
Well, if they're going to deliver it to me in TV form, look, I would take it in movie form. I have to. I'm not in charge.
Yeah. No, well, I'm saying like they definitely, the movie output was, they were spending time on it. Regardless, we depart on whether or not we thought certain movies were successes or not. Yeah, but we certainly agree that they were spending time and they were making them look good and they were trying to put out high quality output. It definitely, when I was watching Boba Fett, I started to feel like, oh, okay, they're figuring out how they can make an output a little cheaper and quicker.
Boba Fett. Now, yeah, and you take that, but to me, yeah, it does. This doesn't matter that much, but Obi-Wan has severe production values. And I don't know whether that's because all the money goes to Ewan. I have no idea what happens with that. But yeah, it's interesting. And I noticed this. Disney Plus is just a really interesting conversation. We could have it on a completely different episode of, like, there is a certain cheapening of what is their marquee, like, assets. And I noticed this, I think, most prominently with, like, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, when, like, Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan show up and they're just people. You know, they're just dudes in a TV show and not the Winter Soldier and the Falcon as they've been in the 20 whatever episodes of the MCU. And it's like, wow, I don't think I had realized until that point that there is a risk here from putting this much content and volume out in this format. If you don't do it right, you're actually kind of not, you know, it's not gone, it's not destroyed, but like discounting what that product is that you try to put up in your tent poles and sell to people at those marquees. So it's just, Disney Plus is going to continue to be fascinating to me because they really, not a single show that they've put on has like fully worked for me. And I'm interested to see if they can find that rhythm for me. And maybe I don't matter. Like maybe I'm just outside at this point and I don't, you know, that's fine. I tell people like the market isn't for me necessarily. And you have to acknowledge that at some point, not just screech at the winds, although I'll probably still do that. I have a YouTube channel. But yeah, it's fascinating because I thought Obi-Wan was a complete miss. Some people really like it, so that's fine. Reasonable Minds and all that. But I thought it was a complete miss, and it's interesting to see these things evolve because they're clearly working through issues at both the Marvel and the Star Wars and how to make TV shows and movies. And, you know, we'll see how Thor does this weekend. But it's super interesting. All that stuff is great. So I'm just going to have you on and we're just going to talk about like nonsense.
Well, that's a really smart thing. No, I think you're right. I know you're trying to transition out of it, but I'm going to respond and then you can transition out of it.
I like
no guest can hijack.
Too.
Yeah.
No, I have to get to work life in a few minutes. So we're going to be doing, no, absolutely. Say your response. We have like 10 minutes left.
But it was just kind of interesting that, like, you know, there was a time when the prestige television was going up, right? Like, and people refused originally. movie stars would never be in TV shows, right? Because like it's just a different thing. It's just it's cheapening, right? And then all of a sudden, prestige TV started to come up, and even though you weren't getting the Julia Robertses and the George Clooney's in TV shows, we as an audience were recognizing that like it was much closer to movies, right? You know, so you get more and more reputable actors starting to go in, but then the streaming comes out. Like and really hits, and there's so many streaming channels and now so many TV shows, and now I feel like that prestige thing is now on the wane. But at the same time, now finally the real movie stars like Sean Penn and Julia Roberts being in Gaslit are now finally just believing in the prestige TV thing. But it's ironic because, as you're saying, it's now on the wane. Now there's so much content, you're actually cheapening your own universes, your own star power, your own cinematic feel because you throw something up on Disney Plus, which wasn't the case 5 years ago. You know, like it's crazy.
I remember having this thought very prominently, which is like, oh, there was actually a risk here because I was always like, throw everything at everything. You know, I'm like, yeah, you got a streaming service, do it. Let's get this stuff out there. And I was watching Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and I just was like, oh, I'm not watching this. This is just people. It's like, that's interesting, because I wonder how that'll feel for the next Captain America movie. And because that'll be interesting to see if they put on this. I also agree with Britt here a little bit. I think the volume, which is the big Epic Games Unreal TVs that they put around to now do kind of fake lighting, right? That they built for the Mandalorian is a fantastic piece of tech. But like every fantastic piece of tech, it can be used wrong, it can be overused, and we don't even have like the guidebook yet ready for it. So you can't even like hand it off to the director to say, oh, it doesn't do this, don't do that. And so like it worked in The Mandalorian. It worked, I thought, in the Batman, where Disney, I think helped explain how that worked to WB. And then I thought it died at Obi-Wan. Like it's the lighting or what they're trying to convey with it. Like it just didn't work properly. And so I think I love new tech. I think the volume is going to be super useful in very specific cases. It's probably not a be all end all solution for everything you could possibly want to do with it. And so, yeah, I think that's fantastic. Well, Marc, I am so happy that you dropped in. We really are going to just have to have, we'll just set up, randomly when you're available. We'll do a Hangouts. It's just like, let's talk about TV and movie nonsense.
Well, you know what? Hey, I'm looking to do that, especially now in the next couple of weeks. I'm taking the bar in a couple of weeks, right? So I am studying 10, 11 hours a day. I am pushing off all of work. I've told like all of work. I was just like, I'm in crunch time now. So like the only time I have is when the dog irresponsibly jumps on my bed at 5:30 in the morning and wakes me up and doesn't allow me to go back to sleep. So these morning hangouts, I was like, you know what? This actually might work as like the coffee. Although I feel like you said 7:30. And then I show up at 7:30 and you've been on for an hour. So
you showed up at 8:30, 7:30 Eastern.
Wait, is Michigan Eastern?
We are.
Oh, that's my confusion. Okay. I was just sitting around drinking coffee for an hour waiting for you.
Well, if you had my bell on, you would have seen me on live, Marc. No.
I do have the bell on just on the laptop because I have no interest in getting bells on my phone.
Honestly, if you had a bell on, you could have had all the buttons on to within an inch of its life. It's still a 50-50 proposition that YouTube will mention.
Really?
That it's live. Yeah, their stuff works or it doesn't, depending. But no, I am Eastern. And we'll get it right next time. But yeah, we're doing.
Well, if you like having me, let me know. DM me if you want me to come back. You don't have to say how you really feel about me in front of all of them. But I would love to make your stream,
and then I'll talk to them directly. No, no, absolutely. I really enjoy this. And good luck on the bar. It's a lot of fun. I remember bar exam, and I remember finals weeks being times when I had to tell co-counsel, it's like, no, can't talk. No, you gotta focus. Got to bear down.
How did I pass this so easily 7 years ago? Like, I can't. I'm looking at it now being like, this is how did I know this?
See, yeah, Michigan. So when I focused on Michigan, had the rule was that if you got a high enough score on the multi-state, nothing else was graded. So I was like, all right, we're going to study everything, but I'm going to try to knock the freaking multi-state out of the park so that I don't have to stress too much.
That's an amazing rule.
It was. The rule was if you got, I want to say 90% or more on the multi-state, then You just passed.
You just wave in.
And they didn't read anything else. You still had to sit for the day and a half of essays, which I thought, you could have just run these through the Scantron last night and sent me home.
Oh, come on.
But hey, it would have been cool. But yeah, no, I was very happy to, my essays were ungraded because I did well enough on the multi-state. So that was my focus. It's like, we have to have a strategy. Because I don't want to write really strange family law estates essays and try to figure out what it is you're trying to even catch me at.
Well, that's the big thing, is that like I am doing very well on the multiple choice.
Yeah.
But like remembering the rule statements to get full points on a secured transaction question that like it's just like I actually can issue spot very well, but I sure don't know the rules. I don't know how it comes out. I don't know what, oh boy. Anyway, that is something that bores your audience. I'll stop talking about it, but it's literally the only thing I think about, and why I haven't been making more videos is because I'm just buried in these books.
No, I'm super glad to see you. Hopefully it's a good way to start your long form bar review sessions. Yeah, I have to go continue to handle a closing right now. But tell folks, where they can find you and what you're up to.
Yeah, so I have ostensibly have a YouTube channel, Attractive Nuisance, youtube.com/c/attractive nuisance. I have one video. It's an awesome video. And I'll be
Check it out.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll be doing a Warren Court series once I am done with this bar nonsense. So I think
Warren Court. Oh, okay.
Basically, I'm going to be going through, it'll be an ongoing series. It won't be every video I make, but basically I'm going through chronologically landmark cases in the Warren Court and the background of how it got there, what the law was at the time, and what the thinking was that they made those decisions and why.
Nice.
Yeah, basically, I've been thinking about it for years and years and years, but now that there's a lot changing in constitutional law, I feel like a lot of people didn't even know what the constitutional law was and how it got there. And so kind of even understanding, why we even have these sort of religious exemptions for this, or why we have kind of is actually, it might be fun and exciting.
Definitely.
And Warren's a crazy pants. Warren's a special reasonable minds person. He was a Republican his whole life, almost was the Republican president. And then literally within 4 years of becoming Republican president or non-Republican president, he becomes the fiercest liberal and progressive for the rest of his life, and then dies being an enemy to the entire party that he had like sworn his allegiance to, and was the Republican governor of California. It's he's a weirdo.
Stuff. I love historical stuff. I will definitely check it out. I think the only historical case I covered here is Wickard, because I hate Wickard so much.
We can talk about Wickard. I hate Raich. So,
but they're the same, two sides of the same coin, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So, well, anyway, yeah, and you can find me on Twitter. I'm very active on Twitter because that's one thing I can do while studying and take a 30-second break to yell at someone on the internet. So you can find me at twitter.com/Marc Calderaro. So that's where I am.
Awesome, Marc. Well, thank you for dropping in. Folks, thank you for the hangouts. Really loved it. Had a fun time this Friday. Have a great Friday. Have a great weekend. And then we're going to try to get back to normal scheduling next week and have some fun with regular hangouts, headlines, and virtual legality episodes as I try to do multiple shows at once and run a law firm, and we'll see how I do. But I'm having a lot of fun with y'all. Thank you for dropping in and hanging out with me, and I will see you next week on the next episode of Virtual Legality.